Hello, my name is Billy Bob Harris, and welcome to Connecting the Dots. Our guest today is Ed Curtis. Ed grew up was born and raised in New York and moved to Texas when he was 25, had a successful career in banking, and then started and runs a company called Y Texas. So, Ed, welcome to our show.
Billy Bob, it's great to be here.
Okay. I'd like to, we're going to get into exactly what you do. But first, I have to tell the audience that you're not only a reformed New Yorker, you're a reformed banker. So,
I am.
But anyway, tell us about Y Texas and how it evolved.
Well, as you had mentioned, I'm a native New Yorker. I moved here about 27 years ago, so now I'm dating myself. I'm 52. But moved here as a young man, spent most of my career in Texas. Found it an unbelievably amazing place and unique place to do business and to live and to work and play. And in my mid-40s, came up with the concept of forming an organization to help people that are moving to Texas like I did, but primarily helping companies after they get here get situated and become successful citizens.
Okay, so you don't really recruit them coming in, you just kind of help them get on board after they decide to come?
Yeah, I don't know if you know much about the recruiting business and industry, but it can be an ugly business. And what I mean by that is companies, typically if they're looking to move their headquarters or an operation, they'll talk to 3 or 4 different cities, a bunch of different states, and there's a bidding process and there's incentives and there's a lot of things that occur that I feel it's business, but you've got to get it out of the way. But once you make the decision to move, then you're dealing with people and real life things that a lot of companies need help with. So we decided to kind of get involved in the back end of the corporate relocations and deal with the people and the everyday challenges that these companies have.
Well, but I mean, moving your company, that's a big decision.
I mean, Billy Bob, think about how many times you've moved in your life and what you have to do to change your bills and get a new dry cleaner and all that. But take that times 1,000 when you've got 1,000 employees, and then you've got a company that has to change a lot of service providers. And yes, it's a huge undertaking that I think the behind the scenes of the relocation process is really it's underserved. Honestly, we get enamored with the big Toyotas and the Amazons and the Teslas moving here, and it's great for the state. But there are people behind that, and it's an extremely challenging and rewarding process, but there's a lot to it.
Okay. How do you find these companies that have decided to relocate here? How do you connect with them?
Well, we have a very sophisticated system, Billy Bob. We pick up the newspaper, we log into the internet, and literally that's all we do. We have a person on our team that's all they do is scour the internet and scour publications, find out who's moving here, and then we reach out to them.
Yeah. What states are, I guess you could say, the prime candidates for moving here?
Well, there's only one. I'm kidding. New York, California, Chicago, and then believe it or not, we have competition with some states that are getting a lot of companies moving into, like Florida and even Oklahoma.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, domestically, it's primarily those big states or big cities and states.
Yeah. What about worldwide? Do you recruit companies from other countries? Or not recruit them, I mean, do you help them get?
That's the most fun part of what we do is we get to meet people from all over the world. I can tell you, if there's a concentration, I don't know, maybe Japan, obviously Mexico being on the border and Canada a little bit, but we see a lot of people from Denmark and obviously Great Britain, lots of Germans moving to Texas. It's fun. And as you know, being a Texan, a native Texan, there's a lot of history with Germans and others in the state that I think they appreciate when they get here.
Yeah. Ed, what's the motivating factor for them? What stimulates them? What are they looking for? What do they want to know after they get here?
Oh, I mean, how to navigate the everyday business landscape. There's a lot of preconceived ideas and perceptions of Texas. And it's amazing, Billy Bob, even to find out that today, in 2020, people still don't know what Texas is all about. They still think that we're, ride around on horses and do things differently. Yeah. And we're, as you know, we're further from the truth. But I think it's really just understanding, how do we network? How do we be, how do we get involved in the community? How do we have influence? I mean, a lot of these folks that are moving here had lots of influence in the states and the cities they came from, but they moved to Texas, they see this enormous state, and they say to themselves, how can we really make an impact? How can we compete? And I think, I think that's their biggest concern, is really just getting connected.
Okay. Depending upon the industry, is there certain parts of location, is there certain locations in Texas, depending upon their industry, that you make suggestions to them on? I mean, from the Panhandle to El Paso to Houston to, how do you equate that? I mean, how do you help them with that process?
Well, again, we typically get involved after they've moved here. So most of those big decisions have been made. But what really happens over the next several years after they move here is that they expand a lot quicker than they expected, because they don't realize that San Antonio and Austin and Houston and Dallas and Fort Worth and I mean, even cities like El Paso and Midland and out in East Texas, they're not that far from each other. So they when they get here, they realize, wow, we need to have an office in Houston or Austin. And that's typically where we help them if they need connections or a way to navigate into a new market, getting to know people to help them. That's really where we can make it, kind of connecting the dots, really. That's exactly what we do, except it's the dots all around the state of Texas.
How did this evolve? How did you get this idea? As a commercial banker, how did it evolve into here?
Well, I always wanted to be a recovering banker, as you and I know. But once I started getting into my early 40s, I wanted to get it. I wanted to move out of the career that I had most of my life. And I actually met somebody who suggested, I was very interested in economic development because I was someone that had moved here. And when I was banking, meeting a lot of companies that were expanding here from other states, asking a lot of questions. And obviously, as an everyday citizen, I had a lot of feedback for them. But I also knew the business landscape because I spent a lot of time in banking. And I spent about a year with Governor Perry's administration when he was governor. He was very, very active in meeting companies and recruiting companies moving into the state. I spent about a year with him.
And now, this was before you formed the company?
Yes, before I formed the company.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a nonprofit organization called Texas One, and it still exists today. It's under a different name called Go Big in Texas. Okay,
so what would you do then when a company would move here, or were in the process of moving here? You would get involved with them and help them in their economic development?
No, so this organization was strictly to market Texas to companies that are interested in moving here.
Okay.
And so it's a non-taxpayer funded arm of the state. They are at arm's length with the state, but it's a separate organization from the governor's office. Okay. And what we would do is we would meet these companies and convince them to move to Texas. And then once they learned a little bit more about it, they would get involved, whether maybe they meet a city or maybe they meet a real estate expert to help them find property. But it was really just marketing the state of Texas to them. And really the idea came about when, we would go out there and we would meet them, we would have dinner, we'd spend time with them. And, after we had the formal meetings, they would always ask, what is it like to move here? How am I going to get people, if I decide that I want to move our company here, how do we get all of our people connected? And their big concerns were what is the culture and the environment going to be like? Is it going to be a shock to their company? Is it something that they need to be prepared for. And that's where I came up with the idea.
Gosh, that's a great explanation of kind of what you do. You use the term onboarding. Your company is kind of onboarding now, helping them get settled and whatever needs they need. Correct?
Yeah, it's really just being that kind of that welcome wagon for these companies moving here, and it's a very interesting process too, because most of the time when they're moving here, again, I mean, think about the different cultures. I came from the East Coast, so inherently people from the East Coast are not as trustworthy with strangers because that's just how we grew up, and that's how we did business. So we have to, it's a different product. Look, people from Japan, obviously they have their own culture. Doing business with a Japanese company takes years because they have to earn your trust. People from other parts of the country or other parts of the world operate a little bit differently. So we make sure that our approach to these companies is, hey, we want to welcome you into the state. There are a lot of things that we can do to help accelerate your growth here, but we really don't have much of an agenda. We want you to be successful because your success is our success. And most people don't understand that when they come from different cultures that aren't as welcoming as Texas. And once we kind of get our arms around them and they understand, I mean, I think it's kind of free sailing from there.
Yeah. So your clients are really the companies that are moving here, as opposed to the state of Texas.
Yes, exactly.
So
Yep.
what are their main concerns? What's the questions that you get the most?
Well, depending on the expansion of the relocation, typically what happens is they'll send their executive team first. They start moving people in phases. Sometimes they don't move a lot of people. They move here to recruit people. So their big concerns are getting the people either hired or getting the people that are moving here on the ground, getting their homes and getting situated, but being productive and being profitable, because typically what happens is the profitability takes a little bit longer than they expected. The onboarding is just a little more difficult than they expected. And it's just kind of helping them manage those expectations. But I think it's becoming profitable and getting your people productive as quickly as possible is their biggest concern. Because as we just talked about, I mean, if you move yourself, just think how long it takes to get to a normal routine. It takes a long time.
Yeah. So the talent pool, that's a big selling point for Texas, correct?
Yeah, in the economic development world, it was always location, 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 real estate, and it's still high up on the list. But number one by far is talent, workforce development. Can we recruit talent here locally? Do we have universities and training facilities that will help our people get the training and skills that we don't provide as a company? So yes, that's number one on their list for sure. It's the people.
Yeah, it's amazing to me how many moving parts there are. When in talking to you, I was just as you was going through your explanation there, I was thinking, gosh almighty, there's a lot of different things. There's a lot of different considerations, and there's a lot of services that you provide that I wouldn't think about even until we had this conversation.
Well, I mean, think about the things that we know about in the business world, taxes and regulations. There are taxes that we have in this state that other states don't have. And then there are, of course, state income tax and corporate income tax that we don't have that other states have. So it really affects their business model. And most of the time, the companies that did a lot of research up front kind of take care of most of that. But the way we handle inventory and local and city taxes and property taxes, they're net, we are far less expensive than other states when it comes to taxes. And then our regulations are much less restrictive than other states. So the regulatory part of this gets interesting because most people that are moving here from high states that have high regulations, which are most of them, they can't believe the freedom that they have to do certain things. And their tendency is to ask permission before trying to do something when Texas will say, no, you can go do that.
Okay. So would you say taxes are at the top of that list?
I think it's the overall cost of doing business,
Okay.
and taxes are one of them. Depending on your industry, some industries get taxed quite a bit in the state of Texas. But I think when you put them all together, when you put taxes and regulation, quality of life, recruiting people, you put it all together, it's a mix between a lot of those. Being centrally located in the United States is probably way up on the list as well.
Yeah,
Billy
boy,
Bob.
you've got a lot of moving parts here. I mean,
Yeah, and honestly, we act as a liaison. We're really a middleman, a middle woman. We do a lot of things to kind of help people sift through it and get their answers quickly. So just about anyone that does business in Texas, whether it's state government or federal government or local suppliers or vendors, universities, sports teams, they're all partners of ours because these are the people that we're reaching out to help these folks that are moving here.
you have done a great job of explaining this. I want to change the subject a minute. Always like to ask this question.
Oh boy.
Okay?
Uh-huh.
Ed, tell me your 3 favorite words.
My 3 favorite words. Okay. Under what context? Anything?
Yeah, just your 3 favorite words.
Okay. Okay. I got to think about this. I like the word integrity.
Okay?
I was explaining this to my kids during Halloween. We were in Halloween in our neighborhood because of COVID. Most of the houses had a table and they had candy out there, and the kids would go up and grab their candy. And I was walking my kids around, and my daughter walks up and I said, "How many pieces of candy did you take out of there?" And she said, "Oh, about 3." I said, "You're only supposed to take 1." Anyway, I was explaining to her what integrity was. I was giving her the integrity speech.
I understand.
I was saying, what you do when other people aren't looking. And I like that because
Okay.
I think that applies to everyday life.
Okay?
Okay, that's one. Let's see. I like the word absolutely.
Okay?
I use that word all the time.
Okay?
It's just a good way to answer a question. Somebody asks you, "Hey, do you want some pizza for dinner?" Absolutely. Like, I like that word.
I may be stealing that from you, okay?
It's
Okay.
positive. These are really simple words for me. I like the word hello.
That is one of my all-time favorites.
Do you
there.
really?
Yeah. Hello is one of my if you were to turn that a question around and ask me, that would have been I wouldn't say at the top of the list. Maybe you didn't ask me, but I would just say, because I've had time to think about it. But I think forgiveness, harmony. I'm going to name 4 because I'm stealing 2 of them from you. Absolutely and hello. Okay.
Absolutely. Hey, another one I was going to use is love. I love the word love.
That's very
Applies
good.
to everything.
Ed, you're a great spokesman for Texas. We appreciate your effort, appreciate your time, appreciate you being on our show, and wish you good luck. Thank you very much.
It was great, Billy Bob. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, bye-bye.